The fall before the rise, the velvet curtains of the Dolby Theater shimmered in the spotlight. Cameras clicked in frantic rhythm. The air was electric with rehearsed smiles, tightened tuxedo collars, and 100 nervous PR reps whispering into earpieces. It was the biggest night of the year in Hollywood, the Global Film Awards, and it was as if the entire industry was holding its breath in unison. Sandra Bullock stepped onto the red carpet like she had for decades, poised, timeless, and quietly regal. Her dress, a deep emerald silk number that hugged her confidence, turned heads, but it wasn't the gown that caught people's attention. It was the way she smiled, like she still hadn't figured out she was the most beloved woman in Maven Mominin. The building dot just behind her, Keanu Reeves appeared in his classic black suit. No tie, never a tie. That was his quiet rebellion. He offered no flamboyant poses, just a respectful wave and a soft nod, as if he were thanking the very carpet for inviting him. The two crossed paths briefly. Sandra smiled. Keanu tilted his head, ever the stoic poet. They didn't know the night would become a before and after moment. The show was glitzy, overproduced and dangerously long, as usual. Speeches dripped with champagne-infused gratitude. The orchestra tried and failed to cue people off stage gently. Then, midway through the night, came the moment that would etch itself into viral infamy. The host, a once edgy now desperate comedian, stepped up for what was meant to be a roast light segment. Cue audience chuckles. He scanned the crowd with shark eyes and landed on Sandra. Double quotes. Oh, and Sandra Bullock, America's sweetheart. Sweetheart of what, though? Botox injections? Come on. Give it up for the woman whose facial expressions haven't changed since 1997. Laughter. Some real, some nervous. The camera zoomed in. Sandra smiled. A trained smile. A professional smile. But her eyes? They betrayed her. They flickered, just for a moment, like a candle in the wind. Keanu, seated just a few rows away, didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. His jaw tightened. His fingers laced together like he was praying, or maybe restraining something deeper. The comedian kept going. And honestly, what's her secret to staying relevant? Just keep playing the same role. Charming, broken, plucky woman with a pobun with a pobun with a purring the same role. Tragic backstory. Kinda like Keanu Reeves, except he at least knows he's acting. The crowd groaned. Too far. Way too far. Sandra's eyes dropped. She laughed lightly, tapping her fingers on her knee like a nervous metronome. Then she reached for her water, missing the glass slightly before correcting. A human moment. A crack in the armor. Backstage, Keanu stood up without a word and disappeared. Behind the curtains, later, as the show ended and the glitter confetti fell from the ceiling like empty promises, Sandra excused herself early. Reporters swarmed with questions about her next project, but she smiled and offered only, "Thank you," and disappeared into her black SUV. The internet, of course, exploded. Within hours, clips of the insult circulated under hashtags like #Bullock Backlash and #Comedian Controversy. Memes sprouted. Reaction videos. Think pieces. The usual circus, but then something different happened. A photo surfaced. Grainy. Clearly taken by a stagehand. It showed Keanu Reeves backstage. Alone. In the shadows, standing near a curtain. His eyes were cast down. His lips pursed. One hand was resting on his chest. No entourage. No entourage ever. Just him staring at the floor like it had just told him a secret. The caption read, "Keanu Reeves moments after the joke." Silence, but louder than words. People started asking, why didn't he say anything? Would he? Should he? 3 days later, Keanu hadn't posted anything. Not a quote, not a retweet. Not a cryptic photo of a tree branch, but then came the podcast. He appeared, without announcement, on a small, emotionally driven podcast called Unfiltered Voices. No PR prep, no manager interference. Just him, a single cup of black coffee, and the host, a former war correspondent turned mental health advocate named Lila Vargas. I wasn't planning to speak about it, Keanu began after a long pause. But silence sometimes lets other people write the story. And this one's not theirs to write. He went on, voice steady but loaded with gravity. I've known Sandra for over 25 years. She's one of the kindest, most genuine people I've ever worked with. You don't get to reduce a human being to a punchline. Not her, not anyone. The host nodded, eyes glistening. Keanu leaned forward. And here's the thing. We've all laughed at jokes we shouldn't have. We've all stayed quiet when we should have spoken. But every now and then, you're offered a choice. Be part of the noise or be the echo that reminds people we're human. He didn't cry, but his voice wavered. And if being kind makes you weak in this industry, then I guess I'm okay with being weak. That night, Sandra watched the interview from her living room. Pajamas, no makeup. Just her and the flicker of the laptop screen. By the end of it, her hand covered her mouth. Not from pain, but from the quiet relief of being seen. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. YouTube video transcript, style, title. When Sandra Bullock was insulted, Keanu Reeves' response left the world speechless. Soft piano music begins. Narrator. It started with a joke. The kind that isn't really funny, not when it's aimed at someone's soul. Sandra Bullock had heard worse, of course. She was Hollywood royalty, grace under fire, elegance in motion. But that night, that laugh, it wasn't just about her. It was about how we treat people who've spent a lifetime giving us their best. Cut to black and white footage of Sandra smiling politely. Narrator. Keanu Reeves didn't leap to the mic. He didn't clap back on Twitter. He did something rarer. He stayed quiet, but not passive. He let the world ask questions, and then, when they were ready to listen, he spoke. Clip of Keanu on the podcast. You don't get to reduce a human being to a punchline. Narrator. And in that one moment, the internet remembered what dignity sounds like. No screaming. No canceling. Just kindness. Standing up with its shoulders square and its head held high. Fade to logo. Echoes of Grace. The series. Narrator. This was just the beginning. 3 days after the Global Film Awards, the internet had mutated into a wildfire of hashtags, hot takes, and YouTubers with ring lights analyzing facial expressions frame by frame like it was the Zapruder film. Sandra Bullock, meanwhile, was hiding out in her kitchen alone, unless you counted the half-eaten piece of toast and her old French bulldog, Potato, who snored like a chainsaw in a cardigan. Her phone buzzed. 100 times. She ignored it. There was something about going from beloved Hollywood icon to facial expression meme number 347 that drained a person's will to scroll. She had survived worse, gossip headlines, brutal reviews, and personal loss. But this was different. This was public humiliation wrapped in a punchline, and somehow everyone felt entitled to laugh. That evening, Sandra did something rare. She opened a bottle of wine, poured herself exactly one glass, and opened Twitter. Big mistake. The trending tab was a circus. Every fifth post had her name in it, some supportive, most sarcastic. Then she saw it. Echoes of Grace, a new hashtag. Click. It was a clip of Keanu Reeves on the Unfiltered Voices podcast. She had heard about it, but she hadn't been ready. Until now she hit play. Keanu Reeves on screen, voice calm but uncheckable. The thing is, cruelty gets laughs because it's easy. But kindness? That takes effort. It's not always loud. But it lasts. Pause. And Sandra? She's the reason a lot of us believed we could survive this industry with our soul intact. You don't get to laugh that away. Sandra stared at the screen. No dramatic music. No Oscar-worthy tears. Just her, blinking slowly. The kind of blink where you're holding back something that's trying to climb out. Keanu hadn't contacted her directly yet. He knew her. Knew she needed space. She wasn't the talk-it-out type. She was the bake 10 dozen cookies at 2 a.m. and pretend she's fine type. So he waited. Let his words hang in the air like incense. The world noticed. The internet TRNS the next morning. Something shifted. Headlines changed from Sandra Bullock slammed on stage to Keanu's quiet stand. Breaks the internet. A masterclass. In dignity, Reeves speaks up. Grace isn't gone. It just got a hashtag. Hashtag echoes of Grace trended globally. Fans began sharing stories of resilience. A single mom going back to college. A teacher standing up to harassment. A 12-year-old kid standing alone at lunch until one person sat down beside them. People posted. If Keanu Reeves says kindness isn't weakness, then maybe we've been getting it all wrong. Sandra Bullock's silence spoke volumes. Keanu just gave it a microphone. And just like that, the mood changed. The dinner that didn't happen that night, Sandra got a text from her manager. You should make a statement, or go on Fallon. We can spin this. She tossed the phone onto the couch like it had insulted her dog. Moments later, another buzz. Keanu. Double quotes, no pressure. But if you ever want to grab coffee and ignore the world, I'm around. Or not. Just say the word. She smiled. A real one. Meanwhile, in a different zip code, Keanu sat cross-legged on the floor of his living room, surrounded by handwritten letters from fans. His assistant had printed them. Actual letters. Some from teenagers, others from elderly folks who remembered when he was just the guy from Speed. One letter caught his eye. Dear Mr. Reeves, I get bullied a lot. I know I'm not famous or anything. But when I saw you standing up for Ms. Bullock, it made me feel like I mattered too. Thank you for being a good man. Clara, age 13. From Wisconsin. He put the letter in his pocket. He didn't know what he'd do with it yet. But it belonged close to the heart. The backstory known KNEW 3 weeks before the award show, Keanu had been working on a personal writing project. Not a script. Not a book. Just a collection of letters he had never sent, written to people who had impacted his life, dead or alive. There was one to his late partner, Jennifer, one to his sister, one to his younger self, and one to Sandra. In it, he had written, You remind me that you don't have to burn brightly to keep people warm. Some people glow, quietly, constantly. You've always been that for me. He had never sent it. Now he wondered if maybe it was time. Meanwhile, at a private school in Austin, Sandra visited her son's school under the radar. As she waited in the hallway, she heard two young girls whispering by the lockers. I felt bad for that actress. They were so mean. Yeah, but did you see what that guy said? That was awesome. He's like a real-life superhero or something. Sandra felt her throat tighten. She turned her head to hide the tears. Not out of sadness. Out of hope. Cut to. The letter. A week later, an open letter appeared in the Atlantic. It was signed only, K, the title, to the ones who think kindness is weak. It read, in part, in a world addicted to outrage sometimes, it takes more courage to be gentle. Sandra didn't ask for defense. She didn't ask for attention. She did what kind people do when they're hurt. She stayed quiet, hoping it would pass. But maybe the rest of us shouldn't let it. If we've reached a place where being kind is mocked and cruelty is a currency, then maybe it's time. We started spending something else. Within 24 hours, the letter had been shared over 4 million times. By the time the sun rose over Los Angeles the day after the letter was published, the world had already changed, not in the instant world, peace kind of way, but in the shifted the cultural compass 2 degrees and didn single quotes t ask permission kind of way. Quiet revolutions, after all, don't wear banners, they wear honesty. Keanu's letter had gone viral in a way that wasn't performative or meme-fueled. It hit people somewhere deeper, like finding an old diary you forgot you wrote in, and realizing you'd once been brave. 2. How ITS PRE teachers printed it and pinned it to their classroom walls. Flight attendants read it aloud on long-haul flights. Father in Brooklyn read it to his daughter before bedtime, and she asked, "Why? Isn't everyone like that?" The tweet with the highest engagement wasn't from a celebrity, but from a nurse in Cleveland. "Just read Keanu's letter on my 15-minute break. We're still here, y'all, the kind people. We didn't disappear, we just got quiet." Meanwhile, Sandra's first Sandra Bullock sat in the sunroom of her Austin home, surrounded by plants she named but never watered on time. She had just finished rereading the letter, the third time. She sipped her coffee. Cold now. Why is it that man can't even order a pizza without sounding like a monk on a mountaintop? She muttered to Potato, the bulldog. Potato grunted. Agreement? Probably. Then she made a decision. She texted Keanu. "Okay, coffee, tomorrow, no PR, no cameras. Just beans and truth," Keanu replied almost instantly. "I'll bring the beans, you bring the truth." The coffee SUMMIT they met at a hole-in-the-wall cafe in downtown Austin. No press, no fans, at least none brave enough to interrupt. The two most emotionally bulletproof humans on Earth sharing almond croissants. They talked about everything except the incident. Instead, they talked about how weird it is that fame turns human pain into punchlines, how healing is never linear, how you can feel grateful and hurt at the same time, and how sometimes the only thing that pulls you back from the edge is being seen. Then Keanu slid a folded piece of paper across the table. Sandra raised an eyebrow. "Is this your new screenplay? If it involves me jumping out of a moving train again, I swear," he chuckled. "It's that letter, the one I wrote about you, before all this. Before the world noticed." She unfolded it. "You remind me that you don't have to burn brightly to keep people warm. Some people glow, quietly, constantly. You've always been that for me." Sandra didn't say anything for a long time. Then she whispered, "You know this changes everything, right?" Keanu nodded. "Let it. The movement takes SHOP within days. Hashtag Echoes of Grace was more than a hashtag. It was a movement. A group of university students in Seattle created an online platform where people could submit letters of kindness and share anonymous stories of resilience. They called it the Echo Project. A retired Broadway set designer built a mobile art installation made entirely of post-it notes with one rule. Each person had to write the kindest thing anyone had ever said to them. He toured the country with a dot in Mumbai, a cafe called Grace and Grind, started giving out free coffee to customers who read the Keanu letter aloud at the register. Sandra steps into the LIGHT against every PR consultant's advice. Sandra decided to do her first public statement not on TV, but through a live video on her barely used Instagram. No makeup, no glam. Just her, sitting in her sunroom, plants looking equally unprepared. ***. Hi. I wasn't going to say anything. Not because I don't care, but because I've spent a lifetime learning how to be quiet when the world is loud. But lately, I've realized something. Silence sometimes needs a partner. And if Keanu taught us anything, it's that being kind doesn't mean disappearing. Asterisk, asterisk, she talked about the hurt, the embarrassment, the days she didn't leave the house. But I also want to say thank you to the people who sent letters, emails, art, poems, even the memes, well, the nice ones. You reminded me that we don't heal alone. So here I am, cracked open, but still here. The live video received 19 million views in 24 hours. Cut to Hollywood, a studio exec's office executive number 1. We need to cast Sandra Bullock in something now. This kindness stuff is trending. Executive number 2? Yeah. Let's reboot Miss Congeniality, but make it gritty. She fights cyberbullies. Executive number 1. Do you even hear yourself? Executive number 2. I hear $signs. Executive number 1. You're what the letter warned us about. A new project is born. Instead of jumping back into a big film, Sandra and Keanu quietly began producing a documentary. Not about themselves, but about others. It was called Still Here. They interviewed teachers, nurses, grocery clerks, janitors, bus drivers, people who had endured emotional battles in silence and still chose kindness. Keanu handled interviews like poetry readings. Sandra, with her usual mix of empathy and goofball humor, made everyone feel safe. The final scene of the documentary? A montage of people from around the world reading the same line. You don't have to be loud to change the world. You just have to be kind enough to care and brave enough to stay. The closing moment one afternoon, Sandra and Keanu were filming in a small school in Kansas. A 9-year-old girl approached them shyly. Are you the kindness people? They laughed. We try, Sandra said. I wrote a poem, can I read it? She pulled out a wrinkled piece of paper and read. When people laugh and it hurts your heart, remember there's still a kind part. Not all people throw rocks or tease, some just want to help you breathe. Sandra cried. Keanu put a hand on her shoulder. In that moment, the entire story came full circle. YouTube video transcript, style, title. The Letter That Changed the World, a movement born from grace. Inspiring piano and slow cello score. Narrator. It wasn't planned. There was no campaign, no agency, just one man's words. And one woman's strength. Clip. Sandra's Instagram video. Here I am. Cracked open, but still here. Narrator. From those cracks, the light poured in. Around the world, strangers began sharing their own hurt and their healing. Because for once, we didn't need more noise. We needed the echo of something better. Montage. People reading the Keanu letter, smiling through tears, hugging, laughing. Narrator. The letter wasn't just about Sandra, it was about all of us. And it reminded the world of one very simple truth. Text on screen. Kindness is not weakness. It's power with purpose. Fade to black. Logo, Echoes of Grace, the series. By now, hashtag Echoes of Grace had become a full-on cultural phenomenon. Morning talk shows opened with it. Influencers jumped on it, some with sincerity, some with suspiciously timed makeup tutorials. There were merch stores popping up with slogans like Whisper Loudly, Kindness, the new punk rock, Grace is Gangster. Hollywood's PR machines scrambled to rebrand half of their clients as emotionally accessible cinnamon rolls. Even the late-night hosts who'd once poked fun at Sandra now sheepishly offered apologies, usually sandwiched between dad jokes and musical guests. And then, inevitably, came the backlash. The the Internet's favorite hobby is building someone up only to see how satisfying it is to tear them down. So naturally, a new wave formed, wearing digital pitchforks and spouting spicy hashtags. Hashtag too much grace, hashtag Saint Keanu cult, hashtag virtue SIGNALER, unite one. Headline read, Are Sandra and Keanu Hollywood's new emotional puppeteers? Another, empathy is exhausting. Give us back our sarcasm. Satirical skits popped up, mocking the PA movement. One featured an actress playing Saint Sandra, blessing people with tissues and telling them to cry responsibly. Another showed Keanu as a brooding monk who wept every time someone said, "You're welcome." It was exhausting. But the weirdest twist? The comedian who originally insulted Sandra suddenly re-emerged on a redemption tour. The not quite apology why he booked an appearance on a major podcast. The host introduced him with an enthusiastic, "Here's the guy who made Hollywood cry." He leaned into the mic and said, "Look, I'm a comic. I roast people. That's the gig. If Sandra Bullock can't handle one joke, maybe she's not as graceful as everyone says." Cue awkward silence. But hey, if people got all soft and decided kindness is the new trend, I guess I'm the dinosaur. That said, if Sandra wants to talk it out over a cappuccino, I'm game. Unless she only drinks tears now. The clip went viral again. But not the way he hoped. Sandra's DLMMA, the internet erupted with a single thunderous question. Should she forgive him? Talk shows debated it. Public opinion divided like a modern-day morality play. Even people with no skin in the game weighed in. Like, I don't know Sandra Bullock personally, but as someone who once stubbed their toe and forgave the wall, I say let it go. But here's the thing. Sandra didn't owe anyone anything. Not forgiveness. Not outrage. Not performance. Still, the pressure was suffocating. A night in the DRK that night, she couldn't sleep. She walked barefoot across the cold floor of her house, tea in hand, thinking. Not about what to say, but whether silence was still enough. Then. She remembered a quote Keanu had once told her years ago on a movie set. Not every fire deserves oxygen. She smiled. Then turned on her camera. The video, against her publicist's wishes, she sat in her usual sunroom, this time with dim lighting and no carefully curated plants. She looked directly into the lens. ***, people keep asking me if I'm going to forgive him. But that word ... it doesn't sit right. Not because I can't, but because it's being treated like a prize. Like I'm a game show host holding the "You're redeemed" buzzer. That's not what grace is. Grace isn't applause. It's a choice. One you make when no one's looking. ***, she paused. Bit her lip. Exhaled. So ... I don't forgive to trend. I forgive because I'd like to live in a world where people grow. That includes him. That includes me. And if that makes me weak, then call me breakable. I'll wear it like a badge. Behind the scenes, Keanu watched the video while eating ramen. Straight out of the pot. He wasn't surprised. He never was with her. That woman had the emotional range of a grand piano and played every note without needing a spotlight. He texted her. That was baller. Sandra replied with a crying laugh emoji and, "You make Grace sound like a motorcycle stunt, isn't it?" He texted back. The young fan who lit the next flamey a week later, Sandra received a letter in the mail. A real one. With stamps and everything. It was from a 14-year-old girl named Maisie from Oregon. It read, "I got bullied a lot this year. But I saw your video and I showed it to my mom. Then I showed it to my principal. They made a kindness wall in our school and people write notes when they're too shy to talk. Some of the notes are just hearts. Some say thank you for not laughing when I tripped. Some are anonymous, but they help. Thank you for teaching the grown-ups how to be nice again." Sandra didn't respond with a press statement. She called the school. 2 weeks later, she showed up at Maisie's middle school, unannounced, no cameras, and spent the day talking to students, writing her own note for the wall. You matter. Even when you whisper, even when you cry, especially then. SBTHE film project Giaros Keanu and Sandra's documentary, Still Here, picked up steam. But now it wasn't just a documentary. It was a movement. They opened up submissions for everyday stories of kindness under pressure. Within 48 hours, they had over 80,000 emails from across the world, some heartbreaking, some hilarious. All Human. One story featured a barista who started writing jokes on every cup after a customer confided they were struggling with depression. Another came from a UPS driver who noticed a house without Christmas lights and decorated it himself with string lights from his garage. These stories didn't go viral, but they should have. So Sandra and Keanu decided they would. One. The invitation nobody wanted. 2 months into #Echoes of Grace, life looked almost normal. Sandra was final cutting the Still Here documentary. Keanu was editing voiceover in a sound booth that smelled like cedar and existential dread. Recording studios always do. Then their publicist forwarded an email stamped confidential. Subject: panel invite, comedy and consequence event. Pacifica Film and Media Festival guests: Sandra Bullock, Keanu Reeves, and, dramatic pause, Trevor Royce. Yes, the comedian. Apparently, the festival's big idea was to stage a healing conversation on live stream. Think TED Talk meets professional knife throwing. Keanu's first reply was a single word: no. Sandra typed a paragraph, deleted it, typed another, deleted again. She finally texted Keanu, "If we keep ducking the hard rooms, the hard rooms win," he fired back. Define ducking. Also define room. After 3 hours, one FaceTime, and a shared pint of virtual cookie dough ice cream, they agreed. They'd go, but only on their terms. 2. The Green Room of Ghost Pacificas. Historic Orpheum Theater smells like velvet and 1920s gossip. Sandra arrived first, heart ricocheting. Keanu showed up with 2 cappuccinos and what looked suspiciously like a handwritten poem stuffed in his jacket pocket. Foreshadowing? Anyone? Trevor Royce breezed in last overspritzed cologne, nerves hiding behind swagger. He opened with a line that landed like a lead duck. "Hey, Bullock, ready for the ratings bonanza?" Silence. Even the complimentary hummus looked embarrassed. Keanu finally extended a hand. Trevor shook it like it was booby-trapped. "Keanu, we're here to talk, not trend." Trevor, forced chuckle. "Talk? Trend same thing if the joy fee's good." Sandra studied him, really studied him, for the first time since the awards night debacle. Beneath the smirk she saw something new, panic dressed as punchlines. 3. Flashbacks and landmines. The moderator, a seasoned journalist named Maya Chun, began with softballs. But softballs still bruise when you're raw. Question to Trevor: looking back, would you change that monologue? Trevor: I'd buy. Funnier writers. Audience: nervous titters. Question to Sandra: what did the joke take from you? Sandra: honestly? 3 days of sleep, 1 bottle of Merlot, and the illusion that humiliation only hurts if you believe it. Audience: stunned silence. Then applause. Maya pivoted. Tonight isn't about blame, it's about responsibility. Trevor: your move. And Trevor dropped the facade. I grew up in a house where we roasted each other instead of hugging. If you couldn't laugh at pain, you didn't survive dinner. I thought that was normal. Then the whole world told me it wasn't just a joke, it was a wound. I panicked. Doubled down. That's on me. Cue a collective inhale. 4. The letter on stage. Keanu reached into his jacket and unfolded that scuffed sheet of paper, the poem. Forgiveness isn't an eraser. It's a door left unlocked. Walk through if you're ready, stay out if you're not. He set it on the table between them like a peace offering wrapped in 12 pt. Times New Roman. Sandra glanced from poem to comedian. She realized forgiveness wasn't a soundbite. It was a million quiet decisions to let go again and again, until the past grew hoarse from shouting. She spoke, not for headlines, but for herself. Trevor, I can't promise you public absolution, but I can promise I'll stop renting you space in my head. Trevor swallowed. That's more than I deserve. 5. The public Q&A. A Twitter on legs. Someone asked Keanu if kindness ever felt futile. Keanu, futile? Sure, but so does brushing your teeth. You still do it or everything starts to decay. Another asked Sandra if she believed hurt people always hurt people. Sandra, hurt people sometimes heal people once they remember they can. Trevor got a final question. What will you do differently? He exhaled. Write jokes that punch up, then offer a hand down. Comedy shouldn't leave bruises unless they're self-inflicted. The crowd gave a standing ovation, not thunderous but earnest. Sometimes earnest is louder. 6. Aftermath Alley. Backstage, Trevor handed Sandra a sealed envelope. For when you're ready. Then he left, escorted by a publicist who looked like she deserved hazard pay. Sandra debated opening it, but Keanu's expression said, "The universe is giving you closure. Might as well read the fine print." Inside, a donation receipt $250,000 to Maisie's middle school kindness wall program, plus a sticky note, trying to earn a better joke. Thank you for the chance. Sandra's eyes blurred. Keanu's hand on her shoulder steadied the room. 7. Therapy. Take 2 weeks later, Sandra sat with Dr. Esteban Ruiz, the psychologist who'd shepherded half of Hollywood through existential quicksand. Sandra, I forgave him out loud, Esteban. Why do I still feel splintery? Dr. Ruiz, because forgiveness is a flight of stairs. You just cleared the first landing. Sandra laughs. Great. Cardio for the soul. He prescribed no tidy mantras, only time, boundaries, and the occasional permission to feel angry without immediate redemption. 8. Keanu's night ride. That same evening, Keanu took his motorcycle up Mulholland Drive, helmet off under a sky full of Mets game bright stars. He reread Clara's old letter, the bullied Wisconsin teenager. He scribbled on the back, Clara, your letter reminded me the world still has open roads. Keep writing. He mailed it the next morning with a Polaroid of the night sky. 9. Documentary. Milestone Still Here premiered a teaser online. Baristas, UPS drivers, teachers, and a quick, silent shot of Trevor Royce nailing donation receipt to the kindness wall. The teaser ended on Sandra's voiceover. We're all still here, bruised but breathing. Some days that's enough. Some days that's everything. The video hit 30 million views in 48 hours. Comments section, surprisingly civil. Moderators wept with joy. Closing parenthesis 10. Epilogue, the past. Redefined on a quiet Sunday. Sandra baked an absurd amount of snickerdoodles and sent half to Trevor's office with a post-it. Cookies greater than clapbacks. SB Trevor posted a photo, no caption. Just cookies, and the internet, for once, collectively shrugged in content. The invitation that didn't feel like a joke 2 weeks before the Echoes of Grace documentary was set to premiere. Sandra received an email titled, Global Humanity. Honors 2025. Sandra Bullock to receive Cultural Impact Award. She read it twice, then forwarded it to Keanu with a single line. Did you hack the Academy? He replied, only with empathy. It wasn't an acting award. It wasn't for a specific performance. It was for everything else, for the documentary, for the message, for the moment. And just like that, the woman who'd once been reduced to a punchline was now a symbol of strength And she didn't even have to wear sequins, though she still would. Because Sandra Bullock. Point 2. The doubt creeps in as the event approached. Sandra found herself strangely unsettled. Not terrified, not ungrateful, just unsure. Who am I to accept this? She said one night, spooning peanut butter out of the jar while Keanu nursed tea like a philosopher in a cardigan ad. You're the person who stood still when everyone else ran to scream, he replied. You didn't tweet. You didn't clap back. You just stood, Sandra scoffed. That's not bravery. That's Free's response. Keanu tilted his head. Sometimes stillness is the bravest noise. 3. The speech. She worked on her acceptance speech for days. And hated all of it. Too polished. Too vague. Too not her dad, so she scrapped it. The night before the ceremony, she wrote something different, not for the cameras, but for herself, and she didn't read it to anyone. Not even Keanu, which he said was emotionally rude, but acceptable. 4. The ceremony at the theater was a sea of black ties and Botox, the kindness revolution. Crowd mingled awkwardly with industry execs still trying to figure out how to bottle empathy and sell it at $49.99 with free shipping. Keanu, as always, declined to present any awards. But he showed up. Dark suit, no tie. Front row. When Sandra's name was called, the applause started slow, then thundered. She walked the stage like she was walking into her own life again, fully, unapologetically, quietly fearless. She adjusted the mic, looked out into a crowd that had once laughed, and now leaned in. The speech full. I used to think grace was about being good under pressure, saying the right thing, smiling through it, being a professional, but I've learned that grace is less about politeness and more about choosing not to let someone else's darkness dim your light. When I was humiliated publicly, I wanted to disappear. Then a friend of mine reminded me I didn't have to fight fire with fire. I could stand, just stand, with kindness. Kindness didn't fix everything, but it started something. And if my story helped someone feel seen, then the worst night of my life bought someone else's best day. And I'd make that trade every time. Tears, goosebumps, and from Keanu in the front row, just a simple, knowing smile. 5. The after party that wasn't. Sandra skipped the champagne-soaked after party. Instead, she and Keanu ended up at a late-night diner just outside of town. They split a grilled cheese, shared a slice of pie, and talked about weird dreams they'd had recently. Nothing profound, just real. You realize, Keanu said, this is how the movie should end. Sandra raised an eyebrow. Grilled cheese and pie? No, he grinned. A night where nothing's broken, and no one's performing. 6. The Flashbacks. The Still Here documentary premiered 2 days later. Streaming platforms fought over it. Eventually, it launched on a new platform created just for socially conscious content. It crashed servers on day 1. The film included footage from the Kindness Wall in Oregon, the delivery driver stringing Christmas lights, letters from kids who used to be bullies and now ran kindness clubs. But the part that stuck most? The final 5 minutes. No narration, no music, just faces. Real faces, laughing, crying, trying, and a closing card that read, sometimes the bravest thing you can be is gentle. 7. The quiet scene. A week later, Sandra received a package from a college student named Natalie. Inside was a short film called The Apology You Never Got. It wasn't about Trevor Royce. It was about a teenage girl who had learned to forgive someone who never said sorry, and found peace anyway. Sandra watched it twice. Then she called Natalie personally and invited her to intern on her next project. 8. Keanu's moment. Days after the premiere, Keanu was offered a prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award. He politely declined. Instead, he asked the foundation to donate the award budget to an independent art school that had lost funding during the pandemic. He wrote in a public statement, "I don't need a trophy to know what matters. I just want more people to know they matter." 9. The foundation launched. Sandra launched the Grace Project Foundation, a nonprofit that funds arts education, empathy training in schools, and storytelling workshops for trauma survivors. Its motto? Your story isn't over. It's just been waiting for a better narrator. 10. The moment that floored everyone at the foundation's first public gala, Sandra took the stage not with a speech, but with a surprise reading. She read a poem. Keanu had once handed her on a coffee-stained piece of paper. You remind me that you don't have to burn brightly to keep people warm. Some people glow. Quietly. Constantly. You've always been that for me. The room went silent. Keanu just shook his head and mouthed, "Thief." She winked. The podcast heard round the world. The email was simple. Subject, you up for a chat? From Jules Toma, host of Unfiltered Moments. Jules was known for one thing: pulling people's souls out through a podcast mic and making them laugh while they cried. She wanted Sandra and Keanu together. One episode, no handlers, no editors. Just conversation. Sandra said yes before reading the rest. Keanu replied, "Only if the studio has decent tea." Spoiler, it did not. But he came anyway. 2. The opening. The recording studio was cozy. No cameras. Just couches, a couple of mics, and a dog named Waffles who looked like a failed attempt at cloning a golden retriever. Jules, today's episode is not just about healing. It's about two people who redefined what strength looks like. Welcome, Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves. Sandra waved at no one. Keanu tipped an imaginary hat. The energy? Instant magic. The kind that makes you want to call your best friend and say, "We should hang out more." 3. The conversation. The chat covered everything, from that infamous awards night to their middle school insecurities. Sandra, I wanted to be like so badly. I once lied about loving lima beans. Keanu, I once named a plant after an ex and still apologized when I watered it too late. They talked about fame, vulnerability, forgiveness, and what it meant to grow in public without losing your soul. Then Jules asked, if you could speak to your 20-year-old self, what would you say? Sandra didn't miss a beat. Stop trying to fix everything. You're not a walking glue stick. Keanu took a second. Feel everything, even the pain, especially the pain. It's how you remember you're still here. 4. The listeners respond. The episode broke streaming records in less than 12 hours. It topped charts in 19 countries. Spotify glitched. Fans created tribute playlists titled things like, Sandra said it's okay to cry, Keanu is my life coach, echoes of my emotions, feet, Waffles the podcast dog, the most shared quote. You don't have to be loud to matter. You just have to show up with your heart. 5. The surprise fan. 1 week later, a woman named Elena, a high school guidance counselor from Detroit, posted a TikTok. I used Sandra's podcast quote in my year-end speech. A student hugged me after and said, I thought I was invisible until you said that. That post? 2.7 million likes. That student? Now volunteering to mentor younger kids. 6. The final scene in Still Here. The last scene in the updated release of Still Here is a simple one. No interviews. No narration. Just Sandra and Keanu sitting on a bench in Central Park, sharing a sandwich. At one point, Sandra says, You know we didn't plan any of this, right? Keanu nods. That's how you know it was real. The screen fades to black. With the final line, You don't need to save the world. Just remind it that it's still worth saving. 7. 10 years later, the time jump. Let's skip forward. 10 years. It's 2035. The world has changed, but not always in ways that make headlines. It's quieter. Every U.S. high school now has an empathy hour funded by the Grace Project. Mental health awareness is normalized, not whispered. The kindness wall has spread to 23 countries and counting. An Oscar-winning actor admits his first role model wasn't a superhero, it was Sandra Bullock in Still Here. And Keanu? He still rides his motorcycle through the hills on Sundays, sometimes stopping by the kindness wall in L.A. just to leave a note. One final letter. 17-year-old named Malik writes to the Grace Project. I grew up angry at everything. Then I heard two people talk about healing on a podcast. And I didn't change overnight, but I started. I want to be one of the people who whispers when the world gets too loud. They published it as is, with one edit, a title at the top. Moment that lasted forever. YouTube video transcript, style, title. The podcast that changed everything. Keanu and Sandra's final message, uplifting piano over ambient nature sounds. Narrator. Sometimes, revolutions don't look like marchers. They look like conversations. Like two friends on a couch telling the truth. Clip. Keanu on the podcast. It's not about having the right answers. It's about asking the right questions out loud. Narrator. Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves didn't change the world with a blockbuster. They did it with a bench, a podcast, and a choice to care. Fade to text. The kindest stories echo the longest. Fade to black. Logo. Echoes of Grace complete series. Epilogue. Narrative style. They never meant to start a movement. They just stood still when the world spun too fast. And in doing so, they gave others permission to stop, to breathe, to speak, to feel, to forgive. Not because they were saints, but because they were real. Sandra Bullock, Keanu Reeves. And every voice that joined the chorus, echoes of grace. That never stopped. The end.